Hey, good afternoon. Ed from Get with the Pilgrim here, and it's time to revamp this channel. And what I mean by that is it's been a minute since I've posted anything on my YouTube channel, Get with the Pilgrim, and I want to thank you 200 and some subscribers for hanging in there, and hopefully when this goes up, you don't disappear and I can provide some value to keep you hanging around a bit longer. What I plan on doing is, I'll be talking about all things Camino related and, offering up some tips, tricks. We'll talk about gear. We'll talk about routes. We'll talk about money. We'll talk about comfort. Everything there is to talk about. And as I prepare for my Camino Portuguese, which is coming up some 24, 25 weeks from now in September of 2026. I'm coming to you from London, Ontario, Canada. I'm part of the Canadian Company of Pilgrims, which is a great association across the country and tons of great events happening. So, and I know there's also pilgrim associations in other parts of the world as well, which are fantastic supports also. I hope to be a support, maybe lend some advice, help those that are, in coming into their senior years. I'm 54 myself. I did my first Camino in 2022 when I turned 50. I'll talk about the training that took place for that, as well as where I'm at now and getting ready for what's going to be my second Camino, which is the Camino Portuguese. To dabble on the route, I'm going to be doing a bit of the coastal, but mostly central, do some of the spiritual variant as well. I'm looking forward to that. And then making my way to Santiago, and hopefully I'll be able to do the finish there Camino as well. It's something I couldn't do back in 2022 simply because my Camino was delayed, if you will. There was a strike in France, so I was stuck there in Paris for a couple of days. I know stuck is a little bit of a funny word to be using there, but it was a fun couple of days. But there's a whole story behind that and how I got my start, and we'll go from there. So I think first, right out the gate, what I'm going to do is talk about the Pyrenees and day one and what it took to get over that monstrous mountain and to kind of get out of your head and really put to work some of that training and everything that you've done back home. And yes, I do recommend some training and kind of go from there and let you know what it was like for me, somebody who's, further along in years and further along in a couple of pounds, and basically, help those that might be in the same boat or give some advice to those that are ready to go ahead and do their own Camino and take on that wonderful 5-6 week journey across, northern Spain. And if you're starting in Saint Jean Pied de Port, I've got, some great information. And basically, let's just jump right into it. So this is going to be free flowing. I don't have any notes to go over. My Camino, like I said, was 4 years ago. I started on October 2nd, 2022. That was day one for me. I had been in Saint Jean Pied de Port for the night before. The town was full. I had to take a bed with a lady who actually gave me her room in her house, which, is amazing when you think about offering up a room in someone's home to a stranger, essentially. And, the goodwill of pilgrims and the Camino will provide. And, we'll talk about that later in some other situations, but Camino certainly did provide in that case. But yeah, the town was full. I got my Compostela the night before when I arrived. This is it here. If you haven't seen one, this is the one that they actually issue from the Pilgrim's office. I ended up getting into town pretty late in the evening, and I did a stroll and found myself walking by the Pilgrim's office, and lo and behold, they were open after 8 p.m. So there's tip number one. If you're getting into town fairly late, don't assume that the Pilgrim's office might be closed. Go by and check it out because that is great in terms of I don't exactly know what time they open in the morning or how early they do if there's a lineup. But if you're able to get your your credential, and make your way in the morning without having to line up for that or queue up for that, then you're ahead of the game as far as that goes. So yeah, I got stamped that evening. And then the next morning, after I had that stay with the lovely woman who put me up for the night, I caught some breakfast at one of the local guites, as they call it in France, which would be an albergue in Spain. Had croissant and yogurt and kind of got some sustenance to get out there in the morning. I think I left around 7ish. Had I had it to do all over again, I probably would have left a bit earlier. I also was waylaid a bit by going to the Pilgrim store, if you will, to get myself some poles and a couple of other things, which I did get a water bottle, which was helpful, but I got myself a Stanley knife, which was absolutely useless. I ended up giving that away. Tip number two, don't be encumbered by things you think you might use. My bright idea was that I might have needed that as a corkscrew, for a bottle of wine out there celebrating, but absolutely did not need it whatsoever. So keep that in mind as far as the things that you purchase or bring along or needless items. Really pare it down because you're carrying everything on your back. And I think I had 15 to 20 pounds as I set out, and that was enough. And I still ended up, giving away a few things and trying to lighten that load because you want to be unencumbered as possible. So I set out in the morning and left Saint Jean Pied de Port, and immediately as you leave the town, you've probably seen other videos. You start an incline, you make your way out of town, and you're headed towards the Pyrenees Mountains. Beautiful morning. I've got some great footage on my Instagram channel, Ed Jackman. And as well, I'll probably showcase some of the bits and pieces as we go through this video and others. But right off the bat, it started, a pretty good incline. I remember watching a local woman who lived in the village. I'm there trekking along with my backpack and my poles. Poles, I would advise to tip number 3, I think. Poles are very good as an aid for if you're wanting to have those, not only on the incline, but on the decline as well. As you're coming down some of the steep areas, I want to say on the way into Zubiri was pretty rocky with some very jagged shale and very loose in terms of footfalls. And you want to make sure that you can brace yourself and not turn an ankle. So I'm walking uphill, and then of course this woman is lapping me with her groceries or whatever she had for the morning that morning. And I just thought to myself, it was quite funny. Here I am, I did some training, and there's people that live there and they're just used to this way of life, which was really charming. So I made my way up and started climbing up and up and up, and you start to see faces. Some people, will pass you, and others will you'll pass them, and you might trade back and forth as people stop for water or take a break. It is quite steep. It is quite an incline on day one, going up the Pyrenees on your way to Orison. And so I had my Apple Watch with me, and it was going off like crazy. To let me know that, it was pretty strenuous as far as going up the hill there. And we'll talk about things like gadgetry and gear and what you might bring with you and things like, charging facilities and power banks. And happy to share those tips. I found some great things, gadgets on Amazon that would help lighten the load and make it a little easy for you in terms of charging. So I was, using the Apple Watch to kind of gauge, how I was doing in terms of steps and my heart rate and that kind of thing. And I am a bigger guy, so obviously it was working a bit overtime. It's funny because it didn't quite make the day. As I get into this story, you'll find that my day was pretty long, and more on that later. But I'm climbing the Pyrenees, the mountains. You're climbing the mountain out of France, and basically you've left Saint Jean Pied de Port. You're taking the Napoleon route. There is another route, the Valcarlos route, which kind of goes around. That route is advised when it is inclement weather. And as luck would have it, where I was supposed to start my Camino, if I wasn't delayed in France, it was going to be 2 to 3 days prior. And what they told me in the Pilgrim's office was that the wind was sideways, the rain, they were advising people not to take it whatsoever. And by the time I got there on October 2nd, it was a beautiful day. I'll share some photos maybe in this spot here as to my view when I was at Orison and just taking it all in. Not a cloud in the sky. If you've watched some other videos, some others aren't so lucky. It's misty, it's foggy. You might not get that great of a vista, but I was really lucky in that respect. Crossing the Pyrenees, I think I actually got some sun in terms of sunburn. It was a warm day. It was welcome. It was when I see videos of other people just kind of holding onto their jackets and the rain just battling them, it was a much preferable way to go. And it took quite some time. It did. I mean, Orison is only, I think, 7 to 8 kilometers away from Saint Jean, but it is straight up. There's a lot of switchbacks. There is one occasion where, there was a woman who was sitting by the side of the road in tears, just simply because it's a tough day one. Now, don't let that scare you. I mean, there's thousands of people that, do this, literally hundreds of thousands of people that do the Camino annually. And I'm sure there's a couple people that might make their way back down because they think it's too hard, and perhaps take transit to Roncesvalles, and rightly so, because it's day one can be pretty arduous. But when you train for it and you take your time and maybe take breaks, and a lot of people split day one into two parts by staying overnight at Orison, then it makes it a little more manageable. And I'll tell you my story. I probably should have done that, but I didn't. So I continue on. I'm walking up. I'm meeting some people as we go, huffing and puffing, stopping, taking pictures. I did a lot of video. I posted on Instagram every day. If you go back on my Instagram and scroll back, you'll see one reel, if you will, per day that I was there doing the Camino. So I was just capturing it that way. And just taking my time, maybe a little too much, because as I got to Orison, I was kind of conflicted in that I didn't know if I was going to stay there that night or push on and finish the day in Roncesvalles. And the reason is this. And I've seen it, some people have booked Orison and stayed there, and they have a great meal there as far as when people get together. It's a communal meal, and everyone gets up and introduces themselves and says where they're from and what brought them to the Camino, and that sort of thing. And a lot of people form their Camino families from right there, from day one, all the way through, maybe 34, 35, 40 plus days on the Camino. For myself, I got there and I like I said, I took in the vistas. I took my shoes off and had a snack and just, reveled in it because I was there. I was here. I was actually doing it. It was day one. And this was something that I had been dreaming about for over 20 years. And that's another story altogether. But in that respect, I, wanted to just take it in and enjoy myself while I was there. I actually saw a number of motorcycle riders that pulled up, and parts of Spain are just beautiful and mountainous as far as riding a motorcycle through there. I was envious. I previously had sold motorcycles. I worked at a Harley Davidson store, and all of these Harley Davidsons rode up, and these quintessential bikers get off, and I couldn't help myself and chatted with them and spent some more time there. So I spent a good deal of time at Orison and decided, you know what, I'm going to push on. There was another albergue, maybe a kilometer and a half up the road, up the hill, called Borda. And that's another popular albergue that people are, coming into and staying and enjoying themselves there. And I said to myself, I made a deal. I said, if I get there and there's actually a bed to stay the night, I'll stop there and make it 2 days. Because I really wasn't pressed for time, and I could have done that, and I had the time available to me. But as I got to Borda, it's set back from the road a bit. There's a sign up at the main road, and I decided to call them, rather than trek all the way in. And I called them and I asked them if they had any beds for the night, and they were, as they would say, complete or full or what have you. So there was no bed for me to stay. So that was the decision made. I continued on, and as I went, it got steeper, and it was continuing on, and the day was getting on, and I was taking my time, as I said, getting videos and photos of, I was kind of jockeying with another person that I came into, get to know a fair bit, and we walked together for a good 7-10 days at least. And then eventually, get up to what I thought was the top, and was pretty hungry at that point. And as you may have watched on other videos, there is a food truck somewhere along the way. I'm not exactly sure where it is, quite frankly, and I didn't see it because I was so waylaid, and I was kind of getting hungry. And I took a break there by the statue of the Virgin Mary. It's a beautiful spot. It's very picturesque. A lot of people stop there, a lot of photos of it. And I just thought to myself, like, I'm starving and I'm running low on water. And lo and behold, I had a couple of Cliff Bars, this very same type of Cliff Bar that just at the last minute, as we were leaving the house, my wife was driving me to the airport here in Toronto. She's like, here, take this just in case. And I had 2 of them with me, 2 of these Cliff Bars. And she said, you never know. And I threw them in my hip bag and just completely forgot about them for days while I was in France. And then lo and behold, I kind of reached down and there they were. And man, was I thankful for it. It was really good sustenance to kind of keep me going. And that just kind of gave me that last little bit of energy to keep going. So I kept going, and then eventually, met up with a few people, got to the border of Spain. So if you don't know, when you're on the top of the mountain, essentially, there's no real pomp and circumstance to crossing over from France into Spain. It's literally I think they call it a cow gate or what have you, or something that would keep the cows from crossing over. It's an iron grate in the ground, and there's a stone there, and there's a water fountain, and essentially there you go. You're in Spain, just one step over. And then, trek on a little further, and I started hanging out with this one particular fellow, and then we thought for sure we were probably the last ones coming across because the day was getting on, and lo and behold, we met up with three women that were a little further up the road, and we just chatted with them, and they were kind of taking their time because one lady, she was a little sore. I think she was having a tough time, and we just started chatting with them and started walking with them, and eventually, three of them, two of us, the five of us continued on. There were a lot of frequent breaks for this one particular lady, and so that kind of kept us back a little bit. We were just kind of all chatting and hanging together. So I would say if there's a tip there, essentially set your own pace. You're going to pass people, you're going to get to know people, you're going to meet others. Don't try and keep up with somebody who's, trekking along. Like, this isn't a race. This is, an opportunity for you to take it all in, be with yourself, be with your thoughts, record, videos if that's your thing, take photos. Just really, because Pyrenees is day one. You're not going to see that again unless you do the Camino Frances. Like a lot of the people that I've met have done it on repeat occasions. Shout out Camino Jim. And from there, we just kind of trekked along and made our way and got to what I believe there was one spot. It's just beautiful. I'll insert a video here where the clouds were just coming across, and it was just incredible, rolling downhill, coming in through the forest. And we eventually walked into that. So it wasn't fog. We were literally walking through the clouds. And it was just a beautiful sight to behold at the top of the mountain. And then there was our descent. And I remember back at the Pilgrim's office, what they said to me is, when you got to this point, is that they literally said left is death and right is basically the safe way to go. And I guess because left is a very steep decline and people have turned an ankle and their Camino has been over on day one, essentially. And then on the right-hand side, it's more gradual. It's much more gradual. It's how, like I said, we walked through the forest and there were clouds and what have you. And it did take some time. It is a longer route to go around. And essentially, if you've watched other videos where you see people coming into Roncesvalles, it's taking the right angle or the right trail, if you will, the not death trail, is not the familiar entrance into Roncesvalles. We literally came in what felt like through the back door, through a back gate, if you will. So I think next time I go, when I do the Camino Frances, mind you, I'm doing the Portuguese this year, I will try the left side. Just be very careful because I want to get that kind of feeling and that familiarity that I've seen and so many other people do. And there's another point about that too, because of the time that we got there. So as we're going on, the sun is setting, it's foggy, well, cloudy. And we're getting there and we're like, how much further is this? Like, it's getting dark out. We're getting through forest areas where it's quite literally dark. And eventually we make our way to a trail. We kind of see a building off in the distance. So we start really going and our poles are clacking against the ground. And literally there was a horse up at the gate that we spooked it, I guess. And it started chasing us and we ducked into the forest a little bit. And it's really weird. It sounds really like it's untrue, but it is very true. And we came out the other end and we got through the gate and we made our way into Roncesvalles and we came in what felt like through the back door. And we literally got there, I want to say, close to 9 p.m. and for the last dinner service. So there was a lot that happened in between there, and maybe more I'll elaborate on later. But, it was cool to kind of come in there with people that you just met and, had stories to share with. And we got in there and they gave us, we paid for our bed, and we weren't in the we weren't in the area where, when you see videos of Roncesvalles where it's like beautiful, nice new beds, been converted, they have chargers, they have plugs for you, they have little night lights. They literally opened a wing for us that was part of the old section of the monastery. So it was like concrete and cold and, wrought iron beds and that sort of thing. So quite literally all five of us were in this one wing. It was a little different. Well, see if I can post a picture in there as well. But yeah, it was very different feeling. But I mean, we were so relieved to be there. It was such a long day. We wolf down dinner, and it was probably the best dinner I've ever tasted. And it was really just pasta and chicken and bread and wine, and we were lucky enough to catch that before they finished serving dinner for the night. And just get your bed squared away, grab a shower. At that point, my iWatch had died long ago. I was getting very poor reception. My wife back home and family were like, "Did he make it?" Because people knew that I was doing this. People knew that it was probably the toughest day on the Camino. Oddly enough, the Pyrenees is not the highest point of the Camino. That's reserved for the Cruz de Ferro. But it seems to me it's probably the toughest part about doing the Camino Frances. And it's interesting that, man, it's day one and it's right out the gate. And yes, it did take all day. And yes, we were like fully exhausted, so much so that we shortened the next day. All five of us stuck together, shortened the next day. We didn't go to Zubiri. We stopped in, I want to say, Biscarreta, and we were in a beautiful home that did our laundry and did our dinner, but more on that later. And yeah, we were very thankful to be there. We got there, we got our beds, everything was secure. I managed to get a message to my family, and this was day one. That was it. This is everything I had waited for in terms of, 20 years of wanting to do the Camino, and just for whatever reason, life gets in the way, or kids or job or whatnot. And, prior to this, I managed to get a 6-week leave from my work. And I just said, I'm doing this. I did it when I turned 50, and it was right on the tail end of COVID. So it was interesting. I think I wore a mask, or they had me wear a mask on the planes going over there, but on the way back, they were done with that essentially. And yeah, so back to, day one, we did this thing and it felt amazing, so my advice then, I guess, overall, aside from tips, is that, pace yourself, train yourself, and maybe even throw in wherever you are, wherever you live, like people might think that the Camino is, yes, I'm going to go walk for 25, 30, 35 kilometers a day, but perhaps they don't quite realize how much up and down there is. There's a fair bit of up and down. Certainly there is on day one. And, so I would incorporate some trails that have inclines, declines, include some hills. There's a ski hill here near me that I probably should have done in the off season. And because they have trails all the way through, I'll probably do some of that before I set out on the Portuguese this fall. Just to really prepare yourself about endurance and start bringing your pack when you get close to your departure date. And, we'll talk about shoes, we'll talk about gear, we'll talk about, I did the Camino and I had one blister. It's a really funny story. And that was on my way to Pamplona. And it was because after I left Pamplona, and I foolishly decided to use a different pair of socks because we took a trip to Decathlon. But that's just a teaser for a story later. I don't know that I'll do a recap of every day of the Camino. But if you see this and you enjoy this kind of rundown, let me know in the comments if, you wanted to kind of get an idea about what it was like, from somebody who is, not 20 something and in, extreme fit shape and what have you. And of course it is, better to be in, great shape to do something like this endurance kind of through hike, as they call it, but really it's a pilgrimage. But it was completely doable. And, if you take your time and you space it out and you've got the time to do it, and you rest and you take breaks and you kick off your shoes and you drink a lot of water and, you carb load, because, you can eat all the Cliff Bars you want essentially, or have all the, the tortilla that they have there, because really you're doing 30,000 to 40,000 steps a day, and you need that kind of energy to go. So I don't know if this helped, but essentially, the day one of the Pyrenees is not to be underestimated. Day one, let's say, of the Camino Frances, of the Camino de Santiago, is not to be underestimated. It's something to train for, in my estimation. So a lot of people may come in and say, it was no sweat, and great. If you, just left at 6 a.m, got there at 2 p.m, and put your heels up, fantastic. You know what I mean? All the power to you. I'd love to be there myself. I took some time. I did some video. I met some people. I'm doing it all over again. I will leave a bit earlier. I hope to be in better shape to do it when I go back to the Camino Frances. And, I will endeavor to get there, obviously, earlier in the day than 9 p.m. But that first outing, I wouldn't change a thing. It was everything that I had wanted. And that started the journey of 34 days across Spain on the Camino Frances. And it was the most rewarding and the most challenging thing that I've ever done in my life. And I would recommend it to anyone of any age and any capability. There are some fantastic books out there. There are amazing YouTube videos and vlogs and people. I will recommend these and link them, not necessarily in this one, but as I go and talk about, the books, whether to use a guidebook or an app or, you know, um, other people to watch for in terms of Camino videos that are inspiring and informative. Other things to take and not take. Just generally my advice. Now, I've only ever done the one Camino. I personally know two close people to me that have probably combined done over 30 Caminos because as you may or may not know, there's so many throughout Europe in that region that converge on Santiago de Compostela. And, they have been, there are like, obviously the Camino Frances is the most popular with, I think, the Camino Portuguese being second most popular, but there are other lesser known ones that people walk because of how popular these top two have become. And we'll talk about the last 100 kilometers from a lot of these Caminos because they get increasingly popular and busy and a little bit commercial. And some folks like the peace that the Camino can offer on other routes so that they're not, shoulder to shoulder with other pilgrims, but, to each their own. So again, that's really it. As far as where I'm starting again with this channel, I hope you'll join along with me. If you see this and you think there's some value there, go ahead and subscribe. If you want to, I would love if there were comments so that we can engage and discuss, and I can answer any questions that I have, or I can point you in the direction of some people that really know, the Camino inside out and have made it their livelihood. I've known people that have retired to do it annually. It is really something. And like I said, when you find somebody in your community, or even this online community that's done the Camino or is thinking about doing it, is really a magical thing because you have this kind of fraternity, if you will, that of people that know what it's like and have trained for it, or they're prepping for it, or they're buying their shoes for it, or they're wondering what shoes to buy for it, or they're wondering, should I prearrange and reserve all my albergues? One point I'll make is don't overanalyze this. It's sometimes just better to kind of go and follow those yellow arrows. And with that, I'm going to finish this video. Buen Camino to you if you are planning or in the planning stages, or even if someone that has walked previously. I hope to see you again. I'll have more information to share. Thanks for tuning in. And let me know in the comments if this was informative or if there's anything you have in terms of questions. And I hope to see you again with Get with the Pilgrim. Take care.